Welcome to another episode of Chatting with Staxx. I'm your host, Bill Staxx, and today I got Tori Bonanno.
Yeah, it was just missed. Somebody got the name wrong.
This is a picture of your father and your grandfather, right?
That is. My grandfather's on the right and dad's on the left.
So wow, your father, your grandfather, true legend. Like they still carry his name, your name, to this day in the crime family. One of the questions I have for you is, how do you feel about that? That they carry your name in a crime family?
Well, I'd feel a lot better if I got royalties.
Yeah.
I mean, there's something. If there was some, if there was some benefit to me, there's not. But what do I think about that? It's kind of impressive that it has lasted, and it is, just one of the the five foundational names of the American mafia. And now that it's all romanticized and people are they blend the what really happened with what's they see in the movies. It really doesn't matter. If somebody asks who's your favorite gangster, they might say Tony Montana. And he's like, he's not even Italian, and that's not even a mafia thing. But whatever.
They'll say someone in a movie or something. Yeah,
right. That's what I mean. It's like not even a real character, and so to me that the name Bonanno Crime Family doesn't hurt in any way, but because it's recognizable, and people always say, "Hey, are you any relation?" Well, in fact, I am, and usually it's anybody under 50 didn't know about it just a couple of years ago, wouldn't know about it, but now with this, whatever, like your show and what's happening in the podcast sphere. It's a popular topic, and
really
people like to talk about it. And you got Francese and Sammy the Bull, and a lot of other guys, doing these shows and getting subscribers and making a go of it. So more power to them, and I'm hoping to to get in on that. And so
you really should, because you haven't cooperated, correct?
No, yeah, I just observed from afar. Or from near, I should say.
Basically, they consider you mob royalty. I would call your channel Mob Royalty. That would be a good one.
I'm telling you, I might just borrow that. So
hey man, go ahead.
I'll give you credit.
I need my royalties.
So that's a good ad. It's a double entendre. I like it. Mafia royalties.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, with that name, my dad always differentiated between the Bonanno Crime Family with the family with a capital F, like it was the name of an organization, and the Bonanno family with a small f, which is our, my grandfather, my father, my uncles, my cousins, my aunts, my nieces, everybody in the family. So he always made a point to distinguish between the two. And mostly it was because when people were, saying, how could you be such a murderer and, rape and human traffic? And he's like, whoa, slow down. There's a difference between, the two things. And anyway, that's always been the capital F and the lowercase f were my dad's, the way he distinguished it. So
yeah. So Dan, there's so many questions I have for you. It's insane. How many years did you get to spend with your grandfather?
Well, my grandfather died in like 2002, and we were, as kids, we were brought to Tucson and dropped off basically in the summers, right? From, maybe 66 on. And, he ran a tight ship, but my grandmother, she ran a tighter ship, and she kept him in line. She kept all the kids in line, my grandma Faye Bonanno. So, but once again, we were kids, we were dropped off in Tucson, and hey, we just rolled with it. And, grandma and grandpa were stricter than, mom and dad. And, if we didn't do what we were told, we felt it mostly. But we knew, we straightened up, and it was all good. No traumatic childhood, stories. Just
didn't your grandfather go to prison for a while?
He went. The only time he went to prison for was a contempt of court when after the in the 80s, when they started asking him questions about his book and about. He wouldn't answer, right? So they put him in 6 months contempt of court. Came back 6 months later. The judge asked him again. He didn't answer. 6 months again. After 18 months, they're like, man, this guy's costing us too much money. He's not going to talk. Send him home. So that was the only time he was never really convicted. It was contempt, but there was no criminal. He never got criminally convicted. I mean, one time he got busted in Canada, and they trumped up a charge of, him trying to, illegal immigration type thing, but, nothing stuck. And he was back in New York in no time. So, but that's it. Yeah. He was too smart, and he tried to do things right, believe it or not. My grandfather was, all about doing things right, making the peace between all the families and making sure everybody was, making money and, following the code, because, the code was he was very, very, serious about, the code, his honor code and everything. So, and he expected everybody else's loyalty, complete and total unquestioning loyalty. Right. And not everybody is that way, but, the guy was pretty amazing. He, commanded that kind of respect, and there was a lot of people that would, do anything for him. I mean, anything. So,
including lay their life down.
That's right. Yeah. And that's exactly without question. Right. And, so
a lot of people romanticize the mob stuff, but they don't look at the other end of the spectrum where your father went to prison and you having to deal with all that time,
Right. And there's not like there's a Social Security mafia fund for, family when the bread, winner goes to jail, there's no more bread, right? I mean, unless you make it yourself. So, mom was working, 2 jobs, and, all of us kids, as soon as we were, old enough, we were, babysitting, mowing yards, doing anything, just, because those are lean times. But yeah, then when dad was out, we definitely lived, a lot. It was a different world when he was around, right? There were parties, there were people, there were Cadillacs, there were steaks, there were barbecues. There were people bringing, stuff and inviting us places. But when they're in the can, that dries up, and only the closest, relatives, because everybody else, he's the draw, right? Dad was the celebrity, so to speak. And, the rest of us, we rode his coattails, but there were some lean years. Yeah. When they're away. Right.
Because when he's out, everyone wants to be around him. Right. And he's like,
right. Then it's everybody just wants their picture with him, so to speak. Right.
Yeah.
And they want to help him in business, and they want to help him, personally. They want to hook him up with this and that, and the world changes when he's out and when he was in.
So when he was out, what kind of people did you see come to him? He was the cop regime, right? The capo of the family.
Well,
they would say,
when we moved to California, that whole, they left a lot of that behind. But yeah, I mean, he was definitely wherever my dad was in whatever situation, he was in charge. If that's what you mean.
Even though they moved to
there, Grandpa was around, then he would defer to Grandpa. But whenever else, he was definitely, and all the guys treated him that way, with deference and respect, and nobody would openly cross him, because he also commanded a lot of respect. I mean, my grandfather was at a different level, but my dad had a lot of those same characteristics and trait, and also dedication to the code and to the cause, and and trying, and in their minds they did things right.
Do you remember when your father went to jail?
Oh yeah, I mean, I remember, as there were several different stints, of 4 years each, and each one was, I was a little older and have a different memory, but when he was a kid, the day I remember the day, he got in a taxi and they said he was going to the Army. And I was like, whatever, second grade, first grade. And that was fine explanation. I went on and, grabbed my basketball and went outside and shot some hoop. It didn't bother me once he left. It's like, oh, he's going to the Army. And then it was one of the neighbors, neighborhood kids' fathers who started, just, ripping on me. Hey, what do you think of your dad going to jail? Blah, blah, blah. And that's when I'm like, Mom, what is he talking about? And then that's when I found out. And, and you're that young, you're crushed because not because I was lied to, it's because, he was going to jail. And that was just so much worse than, the Army. Right.
Yeah. So, either way, you can't see the person. You know, it's not like you can
Right.
visit them. It's. Did you ever feel law enforcement's presence around you? And did you ever notice them following you around
Oh
or
yeah,
anything like
I mean,
that?
they would park out front. They had well, the IRS agent, Bill Summers. Mom would send them sandwiches. He'd be out there for all day, for a couple days, and she'd go bring him a sandwich, and hey, Mr. Summer, and yeah, they were present, and they were not omnipresent, but there were times when they were, they wanted to know if Dad was coming around. He was out, and they were looking for him or wanted to talk to him. Yeah, they would just camp right out, and they were just part of the landscape.
One of the things I want to know, and I want to know this question. Other people have asked me, um, where did your parents get the name from to name you Tori?
Well, as my oldest brother, the oldest son, is named after, the father's father, and the
It's
second,
from Salvatore, right?
well, the second son is named after the mother's father. My mother's father was Salvatore Profaci, Joe Profaci's brother, right? So Salvatore, the second son, I was named after the mother's father. That's within the Sicilian naming convention. So even though my dad and I have the same name, I was not named after him. I was named after my mother's father, Salvatore Profaci. So,
That is really weird because I'm the third. My
yeah.
name's William, so I'm William the third. That's pretty weird how they did that, right?
Yep.
It's a pretty unique name though. I never seen anybody with that type of name
Well,
before.
the story goes that when my mom was growing up in Brooklyn, of course in Brooklyn and where they lived, there was a lot of Sicilians and Italians and a lot of Salvatores, and the nicknames they had were Sal, Sonny, or Sammy, or Torido, or Tori. Right? And there was Tori Cerrito, who lived on the next block, and she liked the name Tori. And as soon as I was born, that had to be, of course, following the convention, that kind of had to be named Salvatore, but she started calling me Tori right away, and it's